Good morning and welcome to today's meeting of the TV Toastmasters. We're pleased to have all of our viewing guests here and as well as our usual members. I'd like to welcome you to this meeting, and we will begin right away with our Toastmaster, Steve Ahrenholz. He will be beginning our meeting and sort of guiding us through a couple of great table topics and speeches. And so, Steve, will you come forward?
Thank you, Kristin. Welcome, fellow Toastmasters and our honored guests. We have an interesting program today, and what we're going to do is start it out first with our word of the day. Our word of the day is going to be presented by Carol Cormelink, and I'm going to ask Carol to come up here and give us the word of the day. Carol?
Mr. Toastmasters, fellow Toastmasters, and our most welcome viewing audience, and our guest in the audience at the studio today. Our word of the day today, we use a word of the day to increase our vocabulary and to try to use that when we come up and give speeches up here, that we use that word today. And our word of the day is loquacious, which is a good word for Toastmasters. Sometimes we are too loquacious, and that loquacious is very talkative, verbose, and being a loquacious person, I find it difficult to limit my speech to 1 minute. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Carol. So we don't want to be too loquacious in our conversations today. At this point, what we're going to do is we will go with our table topics portion of the meeting. And table topics is the opportunity that we have to engage in impromptu speaking. That's where our Tabletopics Master, who I will be calling up here momentarily, will give a question to one of our studio audience Toastmasters. And they will have the opportunity to respond at that point in time. The interesting thing about table topics is that it represents a lot of what we do in our everyday speaking. We don't have a lot of preparation time. So this is a chance for us to refine those skills that we have. At this point, I'd like to welcome Joe Schwerling up here as our Table Topics Master for today. Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. This meeting is actually being taped at the end of August, so we're at the end of a long, hot summer. And that reminded me of the movie Long Hot Summer, which was actually broadcast at least once this week. I would like to ask, instead of an individual, just a volunteer, which of our members would like to talk about a movie that's they've recently seen or enjoyed, has a lot of meaning for them, or would like to recommend. Say you were just approached by a coworker and they said, "Oh, I just went to this movie," and then you've got one you want to tell them. Anyone have a movie they'd really like to talk about? Katie, looks like you're interested. Let's know about your movie.
Okay, I'm trying to think of a movie. Okay. Probably a movie that I've seen recently that I have really enjoyed is actually Savage Sam. I watched it recently with my brothers, my little brothers and sisters, and it's a really wonderful, exciting film that I really appreciated. It's about, well, it's actually the sequel to Old Yeller, which is a movie that I love. The movie was made after the book, which was an excellent book written by Fred Gibson. And it's just about a boy and his younger brother and his dog, and it's really an exciting movie. And in Savage Sam, which is the sequel, they get captured by Indians, and it's very, very, very exciting. So they get captured by Indians, and then in the end, it all works out okay. The dog kind of saves the day, which really, won me over because I love dogs. So that's a movie I've seen recently that I've really enjoyed. So. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A movie that I also happened to see this week that has both entertainment, educational, and a lot of excitement, but with a happy ending, which I always like. The good guys win. One called Runaway Jury, which teaches you a lot about the legal system and large companies such as the gun industry. Carol Cormelink, where that movie had to do with a jury and actually manipulation of a jury and what the outcome was going to be. Have you ever served on a jury, or would you like to? And if so, what kind of if one you're looking forward to, what kind of case would you like to be on?
Mr. Tabletopics Master, fellow Toastmasters, and our most welcome guest. Yes, I was called for jury duty, but I got there late, and they go from the top of the list down to the bottom. And being late, I didn't have to be called. But I thought they're grilled as much as the person on the stand, the criminal. And I thought, if they ask me, I wouldn't want to serve on a murder case. And if they ask me, did I know anything about the case, I would say, yes, I do, and I think they're guilty of sin and they should hang, and then I would get kicked off of the jury. So I really don't like, even though I do value judging all the time, I don't like having to value judge and deal with a person's life in a legal way, but I do value judge all the time. But serving on the jury would not be one of my most favorite things to do. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Carol. A news item that was just announced yesterday was a multi-$100 million judgment against one of the drug companies. Steve Ahrenholz, since you're in the government agency that deals with the protection of people, what do you think about civil monetary judgments for such large amounts, if it's against a drug company or something else that in the long run may have the effect of taking drugs off the market or increasing the prices or just the unavailability? Do you have any comments about lawsuits for damages that just, or events that may happen, whether it's due to drugs or something from a manufacturing process?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Tabletopics Master, fellow Toastmasters, and our honored guests. Well, what are my thoughts on a judgment of that large an amount? I think what we have going on here are some issues that transcend the dollar amount associated with the award. We have a company, it's a pharmaceutical company, but it could be some other company that has as one of its basic responsibilities to be accountable to the community that they serve, their public, their customer. As I've heard this product described, it was a blockbuster product. It was one that, of course, was only available by trade name. It has produced an enormous amount of income for the company that manufactured it. What it comes down to is transparency, honesty, and trust. And if we have an organization that has a product and there is a problem with it, and that is not brought to the attention of the consuming public, that represents a failure as far as garnering trust from the public that they serve. And what this award, I think, is telling the company, and also other companies, that are watching this going on, that there are considerations that need to be placed above corporate profit and above some of the complexities that a company might face by coming forward and being upfront with problems that they have encountered. So I think that transparency, honesty, and being a good corporate citizen are some of the issues that are really playing out here, and that's what we're starting to see. Mr. Tabletopics Master?
Hey. Thank you, Steve. Sheila Mudbaker. Again, as we're finishing the summer season, school season is about to start, and would you entertain us with any story about either some unusual event that happened during your work with the recreation department, or a personal story maybe from when you were in school that it was an unusual event? Sheila.
Well, fortunately, very fortunately, I'm still in school. I'm always going to be in school, so I can talk about school today. I can talk about recreation. I could probably talk about anything. In fact, I just love to talk. So I do remember kindergarten. And the reason why I'm thinking about kindergarten is because back 5 years ago, my niece was born, and she started kindergarten yesterday. So I remember when I went to kindergarten, and it was the very first day. And the exciting thing about it was that I got to walk to school. It was 1 block away. And I had on, it was not really a fall day, but you know how little kids are, they want to wear their sweaters, they want to get all dressed up. So I had my new sweater for school, a little cotton sweater. And on the very first day, we had a fire drill. And I left my sweater behind. And in a fire drill, of course, you're supposed to follow what the teacher says. We got all the way out. I realized I left my sweater behind, and I went back to get my sweater, and I got in all sorts of trouble. And I said, I don't care what you do to me, but if my mother finds out I lost my sweater, I'm dead. So I'm wondering what happened to my little niece on her first day of school. She's my grandniece. Because my niece, her mother, sent me pictures by email showing her all dressed up, much as I was, with a little pleated skirt and the little sweater and red shoes with pink laces on it, much as I dressed, and a whole lot more years ago than just 5. And I wonder if she had a fire drill on her first day. So, Mr. Toastmaster, that's probably all I want to talk about, because there's nothing worse or better than the first day of school.
Personally, I don't remember too much about what I wore in school. The girls had to wear uniforms, but the boys could wear whatever they want. But I'm making up for it in my older age now. I just get everything orange. For a final question, again, an area of current concern to everyone's pocketbook is the skyrocketing price of gasoline. Kristin, I'd like to ask you what your preferences would be for a car for your own use, or what you would like to see as far as with some of the issues on to get the government moving on something in order to control prices. Do you have any suggestions, or just talk about what you'd like to do for your own vehicular transportation without breaking your pocketbook?
I will first of all talk about the gas prices. I was talking to a friend of mine last week, and he mentioned that he's always concerned about the gas prices. So he's always looking to see, you know, what the gas prices are and to get the cheapest deal that he can, as if that's possible today. And I had to admit, I don't really look at gas prices. It's a terrible habit of mine. They're all so high, I just pull into whatever gas station I can and I just pump my gas. Well, that brings me, though, to something that I heard the other day. I was listening to the radio, and I found out that in many other countries, for instance, Norway and I believe Switzerland, some of the European countries, people actually pay $5 a gallon for gas. It's unbelievable. $5 a gallon, and that's because the government actually taxes gas. Then in other countries like Venezuela, then they actually only pay about $0.25 a gallon because it's just much cheaper there. So just interesting. You know, here in the U.S., we're not the only place that's paying extreme amounts for gas. But that brings me to my unfortunate vehicle situation. I have a 1990 Jeep Cherokee Laredo, and tragically, it gets about a quarter mile to a gallon. It has serious problems. This Jeep, I get in it, and as soon as I rev the engine, then like this big plume of black smoke comes out the back of it. It's appalling. I have to literally run away so it doesn't spoil my outfit. Anyway, I found this out a couple weeks ago when I was driving from Cincinnati back to Wilmington. I had actually a Toastmasters meeting in Cincinnati. I had arrived at the Toastmasters meeting, I was all prepared, and I had a half a tank of gas in my tank. So as I pull into the meeting, then I looked at my gas tank, and I happened to notice it was down to a quarter of a tank. I thought, how on earth did that happen? So when I came out of the meeting, I looked underneath my car, and I thought maybe it had somehow like leaked out the bottom of the car, and there wasn't any leak or anything. So then I got in the car, and I was on 71 on my way back to Wilmington, and I noticed the little gauge, my gas gauge was just going down just as fast as I could imagine. I didn't know what to do. So I ended up being nearly running out of gas on the interstate, only to find out that my Jeep is just running so rich that it is just sucking the gas out at enormous rates. So yes, when you think about it, getting a quarter of a tank, getting a quarter of a mile to your tank, it's just insane. So I think gas prices should be lowered, but I think everyone thinks that. I think the most important thing for me is to get a new car.
They talk a lot about some of the new hybrids that are out. But they also mentioned that when the hybrids first came out a few years ago, they got extremely high mileage on the highway, and now they've reversed it to where they're getting more power, but relatively poor mileage, considering what they have to pay extra. And also, just as a final concluding remark on those hybrid cars, I think the industry has gone completely backwards on the system. I thought the idea of a hybrid car was supposed to be an electric or non-polluting vehicle which in the case of an electric vehicle, the problem was that you didn't have the range. So to me, the logical thing is to have an electric power that you can recharge with a virtually 100% any kind of internal combustion engine, rather than having an electric vehicle, rather than having the standard gasoline engine that they've been calling hybrids and using the electric for surplus power. So if they go with the basic electric, they can plug them in at home most of the time, and when you need it or on the highway, that kind of an engine can be tuned for virtually 100% efficiency. So, but I guess it was easier for them to do it the other way around, and hopefully they'll catch up to my way of thinking. Turn control to Toastmaster.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for those table topics. At this point in our meeting, we are going to hear our prepared speech for today. We will be hearing from Kristin Wright. She is going to be doing a speech entitled, well, actually the manual project is You Are the Host, and it comes out of the Advanced Toastmasters Manual, Communicating on Television. The title of Kristin's speech is Campaign Walking with Katie Wright, and Kristin will be in the role of a talk show host. So with that, I will introduce our prepared speech for today with Kristin Wright and Katie Wright. Help me welcome them.
Good morning. I'd like to welcome our guests today and also our viewing audience. Today we are talking with Katie Wright about campaign walking. Now I know many of us, in fact almost all of us, have a cause. We have something we're driven to accomplish. We have causes. Most of us do. Well, many times we want to take those causes to the streets and talk to people, talk to voters, talk to constituents, talk to people that we can mobilize to care about our issue. So today, we're talking with Katie Wright, who has done numerous campaigns and talked to numerous voters, people door to door, and she's going to be telling us about her campaign walking experiences. For those of you who aren't familiar with campaign walking, it's basically going door to door to alert people to an issue, to a candidate, or to a cause. So today, Katie, why don't you tell us about how many campaigns you have worked on and what sort of districts you have covered throughout that time?
Well, Kristin, it seems like I've been on campaigns all of my life.
Okay.
And I probably started campaign walking when I was 13,
Wow.
and I've
Young.
been walking ever since. I love doing it. I've worked on campaigns from mayoral elections, which would be walking inside of a town, and you know, so it's a lot of walking and not a lot of driving from place to place. Also, I've worked on some county commissioner races, and those include both the city and outside in the county. And that's some driving as well. And then I've also worked on some county-wide or district-wide state representative races, which have been a lot of driving in a lot of rural areas. And it's really interesting the different people that you encounter whether you're walking in town and you have people who live in town, and then you walk the rural areas and you find people outside of town that can be a little different in our district anyway.
Right. So Katie, have you ever encountered the infamous angry voter?
Yes. Yes, several times. Recently, I was working on a campaign, actually here in the Cincinnati area. It was a congressional race, and I was walking door to door on my own, and a woman answered the door. And this was in a recent congressional race here, which was very close, very tight. It was quite a race that involved a lot of emotions, and it was also a very fast race because it was a special election. And these voters, a lot of them had been just bombarded with television ads, with callings and mailings, and when I knocked on her door, she was up to here, I think, and she said, she really gave me an earful. She said, "You get off my doorstep and go away," basically.
So you went away.
Well, I said, "Well, can you take this?" No. She said, "No. Go off, go
That was
away."
just
And I
it.
said, "Well, you have a nice evening," and left. So you have to be able to deal with those people when you're doing it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Dogs. What are the dangers that you have encountered as you have been campaign walking?
Well, there are many dangers, and you have to really believe in your cause, and you have to believe that it's worth it, Kristin. And I was actually encountered by a dog last year during a state representative race. It was a small dachshund.
So we're not talking anything fierce here.
Well, fierce is exactly what we're talking about.
Oh, okay.
Because it actually charged me and jumped up and bit me. It tore my shirt open. It was a very high jumping dog, and it tore my shirt, bit my hand, bit a big hole in my hand.
Oh my
Very
goodness.
sharp teeth that we're talking about. And I ended up having to do a tetanus shot and we had the dog quarantined for 2 weeks just to test it for rabies. And we had to get the health department involved. And so, yeah, that is just one of the many dangers that you encounter. And you have to believe in the cause and say, you know, if I get bit by a dog walking for my candidate, at least I'm helping get him elected.
That's right. Well, it sounds like you do have a lot of passion for your cause, and you would have to. For those of us out there who are wondering, what is the most exciting part of campaign walking? What makes it really exciting? Other than being bitten by dogs or running into various dangers, what's the really exciting part?
What makes it exciting is that you're out in the open sunshine most of the time, unless it's raining, and when you work closer to the fall, the weather gets a little colder, you gotta wear your sweater or your jacket, but most of the time you're out in the sunshine and you're knocking on doors, and when the people open up, sometimes they have no clue who's up for election this year.
Right.
Sometimes they don't know, and maybe it's someone who could really help them with their issue. Maybe it's someone who could assist them or at least be a voice for them in Columbus or in Washington, D.C., where they need a voice. And you can tell this person, here, take this literature, read about this person, be informed, and then hopefully you'll vote for them and they'll win. And then that'll be exciting as well.
Absolutely. So you're sort of connecting voters.
It is. When they open the door and you give them a smile and you say, hi, I'm out walking door to door for State Representative David Daniels, then they will just look at you like, wow, why are you doing this?
Exactly. It's that personal touch.
And you just want to say, yeah, I'm doing it because either you have a crush on the campaign manager or you really believe in the cause.
Now the real story's coming out here. All right. So for those who are wondering, what is campaign walking like? Why don't you give us kind of an average, like a campaign walking day scenario?
Well, I guess I would like to talk about the weekend walks, because last year I did a lot of walking just one-on-one with the candidate. He'd take one side of the road and I'd take the other. And that way, if a constituent had a question that I was unable to answer, I could say, hey, wait, and then just call Dave over. Here's your state rep. He's right here walking with me. He can answer that for you.
Right.
But the weekend walks were different because we'd get a lot of volunteers in, and we just make a day of it, and we'd all go different directions. We'd pair up in teams, and it was usually a lot of fun. But I always, since I was the volunteer coordinator, I always like to start out with maybe some coffee and donuts in the morning and just get people together and get them all to know each other. If we had maybe 5 to 7 volunteers, to get them all to know each other and have a little fun, and then go over the rules, like don't put literature in mailboxes, don't make people angry, just some of the rules that you want to go over, and then we'd walk after that and basically just get out there, and I would just say, go for it. Have some donuts, have some coffee, and then get out there and tell people why you like Representative Daniels.
Absolutely. So do you have any tips for people who are interested in going out there and taking their issue to the streets and doing some campaign walking?
My very first tip would be smile. Because that, when someone opens the door, they don't want to see, Mr. Grump standing out there, vote for so-and-so, They want to see a smile, and they want to see someone happy and excited about the cause. My second tip would be wear gym shoes. Don't try to walk in flip-flops, and don't try to walk in heels, and don't even try to walk in boots. Wear your gym shoes, or your feet will hate you forever.
All right, great tips. So, Katie, what makes campaign walking most worth it?
What makes it worth it? Well, a lot of people might say, well, when they win, that's what makes it worth it. When they win and maybe you go on and you get a job as their chief of staff or something like that, that might make it worth it. And in many ways it does, but what about when they lose? Is it worth it when they lose? And I was on a losing campaign 2 years ago, and I had to look back over and decide, I gave my summer and my fall for this campaign, and we lost. Was it worth it? And I would have to say it was worth it, because I met so many people, and I was in so many people's homes talking to them, and, I discussed different issues with them, and I found out, I got a feel for what people in our district care about.
Right.
And that does make it worth it.
That's wonderful. Well, Katie, it has been a pleasure talking with you about campaign walking, and I would like to wish you the absolute best with your future campaign walking endeavors.
Well,
it
thank
sounds like
you.
you definitely have a lot of passion for your cause, and I'd like to thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Kristin.
Also, I'd like to thank our viewing audience, and I hope that you'll join us next time. Have a wonderful day.
At this point in time, we're going to proceed to the evaluation portion of our meeting, and that is the period of time during our meeting where we will hear feedback for the participants in today's meeting. We will hear about the things that they did well, the strengths of their presentation, and we will also get some perspectives on their growth areas, things that they may want to consider doing in future presentations. Our evaluator for Kristin Wright's presentation today is Sheila Mudd-Baker, and at this point I'd like to call Sheila up here to give us her evaluation of Kristin's presentation out of the Communicating on Television manual. Sheila?
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. This particular evaluation is of Kristin and how well she did as a television host. However, I must say something about her sister Katie, who was the guest. Katie did a great job. She really did. She used her gestures appropriately and moved her arms and body in such a way that it didn't interfere with the interview. And that's a very common kind of problem that we see in interviews. But let's get back to Kristin, who we're really evaluating. Kristin looked very professional, and that is a major thing when you're doing an interview show. You must look like you're in charge, and Kristin was dressed appropriately and in a great color, by the way, which looks wonderful on television. I mean, this is something that a television host has to think about. You can't wear all black as much as you might think it makes you look very professional. It doesn't work that way in real life. What happens in real life is you need some color so that the eye is not bored by looking at you. So Kristin looked very professional. She was had a great line in what she was wearing. Her hair was pulled back so we could see her face, and it was a nice professional hairstyle. I would suggest, and I have those same kinds of earrings on, that when Kristin does this in the future, that she not wear earrings that dangle or move, because that can distract from the interview. While normally you need something that's pretty stationary, though I did like the earrings. Besides the clothing, Kristin looked very relaxed on camera. It was very important to look relaxed and to be confident, and she did look relaxed and confident. I felt in the audience that Kristin was talking to me, and when she wasn't talking directly to Katie. And that's so important. When you're watching television, you want to feel that when the host is talking to you, she's looking at you. And when she's talking to her guest, she's looking at the guest, and Kristin did that. And all in all, I say effectively, Kristin did a very good job. I would suggest a couple of changes here that might make it more effective for future shows. For example, when Kristin said exactly or absolutely after Katie talked, it sounded more like one of those fill-ins, like, I don't know exactly what to say. And it's better to find something else to say than the more common, oh, exactly, or absolutely, that agreement. But maybe even that's interesting. Just something that shows it's a real response and not just an automatic response. Altogether, great interview. Kristin smiled, showed interest, did the things that one expects in relationship to the camera, and I'd like to see Kristin do some more talk interviews. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Sheila. Very good evaluation. And I'm glad that I don't have dangly earrings on, because that would be a distraction. You think so? At this point, I am going to ask our grammarian and counter to come up here, Carol Kormelink. She is going to let us know whether we were loquacious today. Thank you, Carol.
Steve, you and I were the only loquacious people, although other people, Sheila missed a great opportunity to use loquacious when she said, I love to talk. And I was waiting for her to put that, I'm loquacious, but she didn't. We did fairly well today. Had I not been listening for the ahs and the ums, they would have gone over my head because I was so engrossed in what was going on. In the table topics, Katie had one 2 so's, 1 you know. In the interview, 1 but, several double clutches. Why you, the 7 ums, another double clutch, inside of, 9 ands, 5 you knows. You started a sentence with when and then decided to use whether instead. 4 wells. Steve had 1 so you know, and 1 so, 1 you know. Sheila, in your table topics, you had some double clutches, I, and you had you know once, and twice, by itself 2 times, and 1 and 2 so's. In the evaluation, you had 7 uhs, 3 ands, 2 and that. Joe had 5 uhs, several double clutches on. You used that and which. You didn't know which way to start your sentence, so you started with that, and then you started with the went to which. Rather than, another double clutch. So, all in all, I think we did fairly well. I would not have heard a lot of these because they sort of flowed in with the speech, and had I not been listening to pick them up, I would have missed quite a few of those. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Carol. Boy, I know you were listening today. No, I didn't use any ahs, but you caught some of those other little crutches that I like to use. At this point, I'd like to ask our timer if she would come up here and just give us her timer's report for our meeting. Katie?
I like to do that after the counter. You can't count that one. Okay, today, I think everyone did really well on time. Let's see, in the table topics, Carol gave the word of the day first. That was 43 seconds, and I don't usually time, so I wasn't sure if I should time that or not, but 43 seconds I think is good. And then for the table topics, which Joe did, I was 1 minute and 3 seconds trying to think of something to say about Savage Sam. And Carol was 1 minute 5 seconds. Steve was 1 minute and 52 seconds. Very good. Sheila was 2 minutes and 1 second, which I thought was excellent because the time for the table topics is supposed to be 2 minutes. Kristin was 2 minutes and 53 seconds, but it was very good. And for the Katie and Kristin show, it was 9 minutes and 44 seconds, and it was supposed to be 10 minutes. So Kristin did really well on timing. I had no idea. And then Sheila for the evaluation was 3 minutes and 24 seconds. So everyone did an excellent job.
Thank you, Katie. Katie's also a guest here today with us in our studio audience. At this point, I would like to return the control of our meeting to Kristin. I did have one comment I was going to make about our meeting in general today. We don't have a general evaluator in our meeting, so I thought I would comment on a few things. One of the things I think we need to be sure that we're paying attention to is the transition of the lectern And we need to pay attention to that whether we have a lectern physically in front of us or not. We really don't today. The control is transferred back and forth between the person who has control of the lectern and the one who's coming up. And we generally need to wait. We applaud until the person gets up here, and then we hand off the lectern. Usually that is with a shake of hands or some other gesture appropriately used. Otherwise, I think our meeting did very well today. I didn't find any other problems with our conduct of the meeting. As you can see, we had some very good evaluators that were listening, which is also a part of Toastmasters, because communication cannot occur unless you have listened first. At this point, I'm going to ask Kristin, our club president, to come up here and close the meeting. Kristin?
Thank you, Steve. I would like to thank our members, also our honored guests today, and of course our listening audience. We really appreciate you taking the time to listen to this presentation, and I'd like to thank everyone for your participation in this meeting. Our next meeting will be held the third Saturday morning of September. And our next studio meeting, will be held third Saturday morning of September. And I'd like to invite you to join us for that meeting. With that, thank you so much and have a wonderful day.